we have to talk about Concord. That's Sony's recently released hero shooter that has been in development for 8 years. If that number 8 seems significant to you, you might remember that 8 years ago, Overwatch was released. And it seems like they've been trying to ape that success for nearly a decade, and now they're ready to show the fruits of their labor. Unfortunately, it seems like it's a little too late when it comes to hero shooters. Most of them just kind of have been falling by the wayside. Unless you're Apex Legends or Valorant, you're probably not making waves in this space. Concord was also released on the same day Valve finally announced their super secret shooter was a thing. And that was a pretty tough blow for Concord, which was already struggling to retain concurrent players. Now, when you have a live action shooter, it goes without saying, you need people on your game. Otherwise, matchmaking queues take forever. You don't have anyone to play against. You also can't make use of all the disparate game modes, of which there are many in Concord. Concord was already facing a ton of competition from the likes of Overwatch, Valorant, Apex Legends, other live service games at large, even if it were a perfect game. But unfortunately, it falls short in a lot of areas. It's by no means a bad game, according to the reviewers that have managed to play it, but that's kind of the problem. Concord only has around 600 concurrent players at a time, and I think that's being generous because I'm pretty sure I'm quoting its peak amount of players. Even awful games. Why am I saying awful like that? Even awful games from recent memory, I'm talking like Suicide Squad surpass 1,000 concurrent players. Gollum peaked at 700 players. Redfall broke 1,000. Reviewers can't even find enough people in the game Concord to play a match to review the game. What I've seen of the gameplay user interface, it kind of reminds me of like a reskinned, stripped down Apex Legends type vibe. But there's only really so many ways you can go with a multiplayer hero shooter like this, which, again, even if you do everything perfectly, we already have quite a few of those doing it well enough. People are used to those, you know? It's kind of, you're trying to sway players so steeped in the genre to your game when they already have perfectly workable, if not better, options already available. There's also the issue of the visual. Sony is deeply committed to a unified, realistic aesthetic across its library of games. This means that they used motion capture for a lot of them, including Concord, along with the cinematics already extant in-game. It's going to be updated weekly with cinematics to update the story and keep players engaged. Motion capture is expensive. Actors are probably expensive, although not expensive enough. It's kind of an interesting idea to keep players engaged, to keep them engrossed in the story, yada yada yada. But also in this space, it's kind of interesting because it usually, just want to put a big, caveat there, usually isn't the priority for people looking to play multiplayer games with their friends, especially shooters. It's just not always a genre that lends itself to, in-depth, like, sit your ass in the seat and pay attention storytelling. That is to say, there's nothing wrong with that, and in fact, I think that's kind of cool. Some reviewers have even pointed out that they'd be interested in a single-player story mode so they could really delve into this world, but other reviewers have pointed out that, it kind of feels like they almost, spread their attention a little too thin, jack of all trades, master of none type vibes. What am I doing with my hands? Too much. I'm not alone also in feeling gobsmacked at how dull the characters are. Don't get me wrong, there's a wide swath of bodies, ages, races, alien and human, and styles across the heroes that you can choose. They kind of feel flat. Even the colorful ones, the ones that should be really flashy in my mind's eye or really attention-grabbing, just kind of seem dull. I do agree with some critics who have pointed out that maybe this game would have benefited from a more stylized type of art, like Valorant, Overwatch. It's not that everything needs to look the same to be successful. The problem with Concord is that it just doesn't look like anything. It doesn't have its own voice. It's just kind of there. And then, of course, there's the price tag. People are unwilling to pay $40 for a game that they hear will take an upwards of 10 minutes to queue into a match. $40 for something that we kind of already have a better model for, it's a hard sell. However, motion capture is expensive. It seems like they're really committed to expanding the lore of this world and making it feel like a true thing that you can like exist in. $40 upfront for a game that's going to be updated with cinematics and everything, that's not unreasonable. It's just hard to take out the comparative block in your brain where it's like, yeah, but these other games are free to play and they look fun, you know? Whereas Concord kind of looks very serious to me. I do not agree with the assertion that Concord would be more successful if it were free to play. Full stop. I just don't think a game like this is slated to survive in this current climate, but also if they're releasing weekly cinematics and using motion capture to get that, of course they need to make money up front. I also don't think it's an unfair trade to pay $40 for a game that's going to be updated at least, I'm just saying, like, off the top of my head, at least, like, 6 months into the future. I think that's a fair trade, even if it goes offline in, like, 6 months. If it's been updated weekly with cinematics that are fully motion captured and edited and acted out, that's an interesting concept. I don't think we should, like, beat that into the ground because it's not exactly what we want or they didn't execute it perfectly. And I don't want free-to-play to become the default for video games where it's just a lure for kids to reach into their parents' wallet, because at the end of the day, that's what most, if not all, free-to-play games become. Concord seems like a well-meaning, perfectly serviceable, but unfortunately largely underwhelming hero shooter that doesn't seem to have a place in this market.